So it's pretty much the conventional wisdom that as Pennsylvania goes, so too will the White House. But there's another huge election in the Keystone State for U.S. Senate, where incumbent Democrat Bob Casey is in the race of his life, trying to secure a fourth term. Dave McCormick, who lost to Dr. Oz in the Senate primary just 2 years ago by 900 votes, is on the verge of a major upset. So earlier this week, I sat down with Dave McCormick in his Pittsburgh home. Dave, first of all, thank you for letting me come to your home.
Oh, it's great to have you here. Thank you.
So this race is really tightened up, kind of a jump ball right now.
Yeah. Listen, I'm excited about it. What's happened post-Labor Day is that voters have really started to zero in on the choice. And the choice in my race couldn't be more clear. It's the choice between change that I'll offer versus the status quo of Bob Casey. This guy is a 30-year elected official, 18 years in the Senate, career politician. He's been weak. Every time the bullets start flying, he ducks. And he's voted 98% of the time with Biden and Harris. So this liberal agenda, the sanctuary cities, the reckless spending, the boys competing in women's sports, Bob Casey's voted for all those things. And the contrast is with me, a guy who's a seventh-generation Pennsylvanian, someone who worked baling hay and trimming Christmas trees as a kid during the summers, went to West Point. I wrestled at West Point. I was the co-captain of the team, Ranger School, 82nd Airborne Division, combat tour in Iraq. Came back to Pennsylvania, was a business guy for 25 years, and ran a company here in Pennsylvania that created hundreds of jobs. So it's an outsider versus a career politician, and change versus status quo. And I think as people lock in on that, the polls have started to move in my direction because people want change.
Are you sure he voted with Biden 98% of the time? Because the TV commercials I see, he's running with Trump.
This is the best thing. It just shows the panic on the side of the Democrats. And what's happened, listen, President Trump's run a great campaign in Pennsylvania, but I think Pennsylvania is the one place where it might have been better for the Democrats to have Joe Biden than Kamala Harris. Because Kamala Harris, in her own words, ban fracking, transition energy workers, defund the police, mandatory buybacks of guns, legalization for illegal immigrants, and federal benefits. These positions are the positions of a radical San Francisco liberal, and they're simply out of touch with Pennsylvania. And this is where Bob Casey comes back into the picture because he's a sure vote for that liberal agenda. And I think people are zeroed in on that. The more they see of Kamala Harris, in her own words, the more they want to vote for the common sense and strength of President Trump.
So the GOP has kind of changed, right? It's gone from, the portrayal of country club, white collar, all that kind of stuff, to really more of a populist middle class.
Yeah. Working families.
It really has. So, and so for you, too, you've been in kind of both worlds.
Yeah.
Right? You've been very successful. God bless you. How do you reach out to that, that person in between Pittsburgh and Philadelphia?
Yeah.
A lot of land here.
Well, it's where I grew up.
Right.
I grew up in Bloomsburg, Pennsylvania, which is about 50 miles south of Scranton. And my dad was a president of a Bloomsburg State College. My town was a working class town. In my town, there was a carpet mill, McGee Carpet Mill. I worked at the McGee restaurant as a busboy. The McGee Carpet Mill had about 2,000 workers. Today it has 200. Yeah. And that town has really been affected. And this isn't just under Biden, Harris, and Casey, although it's gotten radically worse under them. But inflation has placed a huge burden on working families there. 60% of Pennsylvanians work or live paycheck to paycheck. Prices for groceries have gone up by 20%. Electricity's 35%. Fuel was 45%. It's because of the reckless spending. If you look at Republicans and Democrats, they've both been spending too much for 20 years. Under Casey and Biden and Harris, it's a hockey stick. That reckless spending, plus the war on fossil fuels, which is really a big deal in Pennsylvania because we got the fourth largest natural gas reserves in the world. That double combination has just been horrible for working families in Pennsylvania. It's hurt energy jobs. It's driven inflation. It's hurt our manufacturing base. All these subsidies going to electric vehicles and solar panels come at the expense of manufacturing. And people want change. So they look at me, I think, as someone who could bring about change. I'm come from that part of Pennsylvania. As you said, I've had a really successful career after the military, and I've never had a single person who resented my success. They just want that for their kids.
Exactly.
And so that's what I offer.
Used to be the American dream until the left sees it as
exactly.
bad.
They're anti-business and anti-success.
Yeah. So in one way, I mean, in the white collar world that you were in, investment banking and everything, is it at odds in any way with what labor wants, higher tariffs, which is sort of, Trump's proposal? Is that at odds at all with your background or where you want to go?
No, I think, listen, for 20 years, we had, I think, a misguided policy. When we talked about free trade, we weren't strategic about it. I think President Trump's done a great service to the country, and I agree with him 100% on two things. Number one, there's certain industries that have to be here in the United States. We learned about that during COVID. We saw the pharmaceutical industry was offshore. We were dependent on China for pharmaceuticals in time of crisis. Semiconductors. You couldn't get a new pickup truck because we couldn't get semiconductors in the United States. So there's certain industries we have to have here at home. That's great for Pennsylvania, great for our manufacturing base. There's just key industries that need to be here. But the second thing, and this is where I think President Trump really changed the conversation, in trade we have to have reciprocity, which means we get a fair deal. So what's happened over the last 25, 30 years is the rest of the world, particularly China, has been unfair to the American worker. Unfair because there's been tariffs on their side. Unfair because of non-tariff barriers blocking U.S. products getting into their markets. Unfair because they've been stealing intellectual property. And what President Trump said was, we want a fair deal. If the American worker gets a fair deal, they're going to perform well. It's going to be great for our economy, great for jobs here in Pennsylvania. And so our trade policy needs to have reciprocity, and those key strategic industries is a critical part of that. And so when President Trump talks about tariffs, he's talking, in my opinion, about strategic tariffs that he uses to make sure we get a fair deal. And he did that with the steel industry in his first administration, and I supported that then. I thought using the tariffs strategically to make sure we get a fair deal is the right thing to do, and I think he'll do more of that when he becomes president again.
So immigration obviously is a huge issue.
Yeah.
It's affecting our cities, its services, all this stuff. Where are you with regard to how do we fix it?
Yeah, well, first of all, you have to understand how big a crisis it is. And I think it's been wildly underestimated.
Yeah.
I think Senator Casey's been a very weak voice on this. But in Pennsylvania last year, we lost 4,000 people from fentanyl. We lost 116,000 nationally. You and I are old enough to remember the Vietnam War. Mm-hmm. We lost 56,000 killed in action in 8 years. We had 2 Vietnams in America last year. Fentanyl coming into our communities, poisoning our children. In the last couple of weeks, here in this house, I had 4 fentanyl families come and visit. We sat down and had coffee. You listen to these stories, it's like somebody puts their hand down your throat and pulls out your heart. They lost the kids our age. The kids my age, that I have, my age, your age. They didn't even know they were taking fentanyl. It's a poison. So we have to stop it. And it's gotten radically worse because of the wide open borders. Fentanyl comes across legal entry sites. It comes across illegal entry sites. We need to stop it. And so we need to secure the border. We need to finish the wall. We need to fund the Border Patrol. We need to fund technology that stops fentanyl. But here's where I think I part company with many. I think we need to, on day one, when I'm in the Senate, designate the cartels as terrorist groups and go after them. Take our military. We have incredible drone technology, incredible special operations. Take out the manufacturing facilities in Mexico. Take out the distribution facilities. This is a war against our communities. We need to deal with the demand side here at home, mental health services, addiction services. We need to deal with harm reduction. There's multiple pieces to the strategy, but we've got to stop the supply. And listen, Senator Casey has watched this problem grow. He's been in a position to take action. So has President Biden and Kamala Harris. They have failed the American people. They've failed Pennsylvania, and it's only getting worse. It is the one issue on the campaign trail that people uniformly, I get in a room, I say, how many people here in their families or their friend group have been affected by fentanyl? Half the hands go up. Wow. It's a crisis.
So here's the tough question. Now I save it to the end. Steelers or Eagles?
Steelers all the way, baby. Steelers, though. You can't live in Pittsburgh.
Well,
listen, I was born outside of Pittsburgh.
Right.
I came back after the Army. When I was growing up, I lived in Bloomsburg, but I would watch Steelers football, the Iron Curtain, lots of heroes.
Favorite Steeler?
You know, it's hard not to. Well, first of all, Rocky Blyer
Oh, well.
is a friend.
Oh.
Lives here in Pittsburgh. He's been very supportive of me. And the reason I've got a special place in my heart for Rocky is he was a Vietnam vet. Wounded in action, Purple Heart, decorated for valor, and then came back. Art Rooney Sr. sent him a letter and said, Rock, we miss you. Came back after Vietnam, after his recovery, and got back on the Steelers and played for the Steelers.
So underrated with Franco Harris in the backfield.
Right. Is as good a man as they come. So he's a favorite. Jack Lambert's hard not to love.
All right. I mean, for Philly, I hate to ask you this, but Pats or Geno's?
Oh, listen, I think
you can say a tie if you want.
No, listen, I've flipped steaks at Geno's, so I've visited both places. They're both great, but I've actually been at the griddle flipping steaks at Geno's, and had a big crowd outside, so I'd have to.
Provolone or Cheese Whiz?
Whiz.
Okay, and then with or without?
With.
Okay, good. Hey, I wish you luck. Good luck. You're coming down the home stretch.
Going hard at it. You know, I wrestled in college, as I said. And, I wasn't the best wrestler, but I was pretty good. And I always knew that if I could get into the third period, within a point or two, I'd win. And the reason is the third period's not about wrestling. It's about mental toughness. It's about heart. It's about offense. It's about going till the whistle blows. And that's what I'm trying to do.
I think Casey's shoulders are just about on the mat.
Let's hope so.
Thank
you.
Good luck, Dave.
Thanks.
Information. Truth is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.